let's talk about Niger and uranium. When you hear those two words together, the next word that probably pops into your head is risk, right? But what if the story we're all being told, the one in the headlines, is just wrong? Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and figure out what the real risk is in Niger's incredibly important uranium sector.
You've seen these phrases a million times, I'm sure. You open up any analyst report, any financial news story about West African mining, and there they are. It's the standard boilerplate narrative. Niger is unstable, it's unpredictable, and it's a super dangerous place to put your money. This is the story we are constantly fed.
Okay, but what if that story just isn't true? Check this out. This one single fact completely turns that entire narrative on its head. Think about it. If the government is so unstable and risky, why are the companies that are actually following the rules being left completely alone and even supported? That's the big question, and that's the mystery we're unpacking today.
So, to really get to the bottom of this contradiction, first we need to understand just how critical Niger is to the whole uranium picture. We're not talking about some small-time player here. This nation is an absolute powerhouse in the global market. Let's just look at the raw numbers.
It all starts with what's actually in the ground, and Niger is sitting on a staggering 5% of the world's entire known uranium reserves. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, that's more than countries like the United States. It puts Niger in a very, very exclusive club.
And you know, it's not just about potential. It's not just what's in the ground, it's what they're actively pulling out. Niger is consistently one of the top 10 biggest producers on the planet, ranking 7th in the world. They are a major established supplier for the world's nuclear power plants.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting and really strategic. It's about the quality of the uranium. It is exceptional. Take the Dasa deposit, for instance. It has an average grade of over 5,000 parts per million. I mean, that is just an incredibly rich concentration. It makes it so much cheaper and easier to mine compared to most other places in the world.
And that's the key difference, right? Not all uranium is created equal. In a place like Kazakhstan, a lot of their production comes from what's called in situ recovery, where they're kind of just washing the uranium out of very low-grade rock. But Niger's deposits, they're so rich, they're perfect for traditional underground mining that gives you a much higher yield. Plus, after 50 years of doing this, they've got the roads, the power, and a super experienced local workforce that knows exactly what they're doing.
Okay, so now that we've got the context, let's get to the real meat of the story. Because if you look at how Niger's government has actually treated 3 different mining companies, a very clear and frankly very logical pattern starts to emerge. This isn't chaos at all. It's consistency.
So first up, let's look at Orano. They're the French state-owned nuclear giant. They got a permit for one of the biggest undeveloped uranium deposits in the world way back in 2009. But then they just sat on it. They suspended work in 2015, said prices were too low, but even when prices shot back up, they did nothing. So after 15 years of inaction, the government finally said enough is enough, and they revoked the permit. Now, of course, the headlines screamed seizure and nationalization, but hang on a second. The reality is way less dramatic. This is just basic mining law. It's a rule that exists pretty much everywhere. It's called use it or lose it. If you're not going to develop the resource, you can't just hoard the permit forever. All Niger did was enforce the rules that were already on the books. They didn't take an active mine, they took back an inactive permit. Huge difference.
Okay, so now for the complete opposite story. Let's look at a company that is doing the work, Global Atomic. They're a Canadian company, and they are busting their butts building their mine. They've already dug over 1,200 meters of underground tunnels. Their workforce is almost entirely local, 98% Nigerian. They've got a fantastic safety record, and they're on track to start producing in early 2026. And the government's response to all this progress? Total, enthusiastic, vocal support.
And when you just lay it all out, side by side like this, well, the pattern is just staring you right in the face, isn't it? Look at the top 2 rows, Orano and GoviEx. One sat on a permit for 15 years, the other for 17, with basically nothing to show for it. Result? Permits revoked. Now look at that bottom row, Global Atomic, actively building a mine. Result? Full government support. The message from Niger isn't get out. The message is get to work.
So what's the big picture here? What's really happening? Well, this is so much bigger than just a few mining permits. What we're witnessing is a fundamental, historic shift away from an old, unequal colonial relationship to a brand new era of what you'd call resource sovereignty.
For decades, the model was pretty simple and pretty one-sided. Niger's uranium flowed out, mostly to power France's lights, on a schedule decided in Paris, not Niamey. The new government has completely flipped that script. They are demanding that their resources actually benefit their country, that development is a requirement, not an option, and that foreign companies have to act like real partners, not just occupiers.
And you know, the new rules of engagement are incredibly simple. They're not radical. In fact, they're pretty reasonable. Number 1, develop the resource you have a license for. Number 2, hire and train our people. And number 3, just follow the laws of our country. I mean, for any serious company, this isn't some crazy list of demands. This is just standard operating procedure.
So, this brings us all the way back to our big question from the beginning. What is the real risk in Niger? It's time we throw out that old, tired definition we saw at the start and look at this whole thing through a completely new lens.
So here it is, the new definition. The real risk in Niger has nothing to do with an unstable government. No, the real risk is to companies whose entire business model was based on that old colonial system, the ones who were used to holding permits for decades without ever having to build anything. The risk isn't that Niger is changing the rules, it's that they are finally enforcing them.
So if we redraw the risk map, it looks completely different. See this massive slice of the pie? For a company that actually follows the rules, the risk of the government messing with them is incredibly low. Sure, there are some medium-level logistical risks, border crossings and that kind of thing, but that's manageable. The only higher risk is for the old players who are losing the sweetheart deals and preferential access that you used to have.
And look, you don't have to take my word for any of this. This is a direct quote from Niger's own Minister of Mines. They are not anti-Western. Far from it. They are actively rolling out the welcome mat for new partners from Canada, the US, Australia, anywhere really. They're not closing the door, they're opening it wider than ever to anyone who's willing to be a genuine partner.
So the next time you see one of those scary headlines about instability and risk in Niger's uranium sector, just ask yourself, who's telling this story and what's their motive? Because the facts on the ground point to a very different reality. The real risk isn't the country itself. The real risk is buying into an outdated story that just doesn't fit the facts anymore.